Hi, welcome to my living room in California. If you can see my face and you can hear my voice, that means everything's working. I'm really sorry I couldn't be there in person. I want to thank Professor Manny for letting me submit this video presentation. I really wish I could have been there, but I want to thank everybody for coming out and checking this out. I could really use your feedback. This presentation is pretty straightforward. First, I want to introduce some of the important theoretical points that this research tests, and next I want to describe the method I use to test them, and then I want to present some of the preliminary results and conclusions. For full results, please see the full paper and give me some feedback. I would really appreciate that. Okay, first I want to talk a little bit about the theories being tested. So this research really looked at the hypotheses of Gunnar Myrdal, who was a mid-20th century Swedish sociologist and Nobel Prize winner in economics. In the 3-volume series published in 1968 called Asian Drama, Myrdal challenged the dominant development paradigm of his time, which was neoclassical economics and equilibrium theory. These two theories were really dominant in the 1950s and 60s and focused specifically on economic indicators and assumed that the newly independent states of Asia, especially India, Sri Lanka, Thailand, Malaysia, would develop in really the same way that the Western states did during the 19th century, and the same things would be important, and that the development would come easily because they were the experts, and they had figured out how development worked. By the mid to late 60s, this was kind of laughably untrue. I mean, a lot of the states were in civil war. Poverty was not being alleviated. And Myrdal looked at these newly independent states of Southern Asia, especially India, and did a 10-year study and really focused on the importance of non-economic indicators. A few among many that I tested in this research were corruption, inequality in terms of income inequality, class inequality, and caste inequality, as well as education and health, among several other sectors. He was mostly qualitative research, and he didn't have a whole lot of quantitative data to back him up. For Myrdal, development wasn't the one-way street that the neoclassical economists really thought that it was. For Myrdal, development kind of came in fits and starts, and he adopted a phrase called cumulative causation, in which positive developments in one field would have a subtle but important impact on another field. So, for example, improvements in health would have an impact on literacy rates, or improving corruption, improving transparency would have an effect on equality. For Myrdal, these cycles kind of work together. When a positive development in one sector occurred and having positive results in another sector, he called this the spread effect. We call it now virtuous cycles. And then when a negative development in one sector would occur, say really high corruption, would have an impact on increasing inequality. We call this a vicious cycle, or what we now call a poverty trap. Okay, next I want to talk about the methods that I used to check it. Whereas Myrdal looked at all of Southern Asia, I didn't really have the resources at the time to do the same thing, so I really focused on India, which is really the main part of Myrdal's research. And I focused on India because it was easy to get census data and other third-party data pretty easily. So what I did is I selected as many statewide indicators as I could that matched up with the sectors that Myrdal felt were really important and really relevant. And I included a few that I thought were kind of interesting in their own right. Some of the indicators that I used that were adopted from Myrdal's research were Transparency International's corruption score, which is unavailable at his time when he was writing, and other indicators like infant mortality rates and Gini coefficient. Again, other indicators that were not available at his time. And then some of the ones that I was just curious about and included was percent of the population with mobile phones and per capita consumption of energy. I kind of wanted to check to see if some of the things that we now see as important as poverty alleviation in factors really are more or less important than the factors that Myrdal predicted. So first I tried to use regression analysis, but this didn't really work as well as expected. So I just kind of went low tech and went with just simple correlation coefficient analysis using the indicators from the census that were available online. And okay, so what did the correlation analysis find? Okay, the correlations were much weaker than expected overall. There was only really one non-tautological connection over 0.8, and that was the connection between literacy rate difference between male and female and total sex ratio at birth, and that was at 0.9, which was the highest in the study. Some of the indicators that Myrdal expected would be important in the development of Asia was the importance of corruption, and for this again I used the Transparency International score. It had a really strong correlation with population growth rate between 2001 and 2011, as well as a correlation between HDI improvement, inequality as measured by the Gini coefficient, sex ratio at birth, and the percentage living in extreme poverty, which was really high. Some of the indicators that Myrdal didn't predict in Asian drama, which was the per capita consumption of energy and total infant mortality rate, also had really high correlations, especially against poverty alleviation indicators. And these were not predicted by Myrdal. Urbanization had a similar effect, as well as GDP growth per capita. Perhaps even more interesting than the sectors that had high correlations were the surprisingly low correlations between indicators that I thought would be really important. For example, the importance of higher literacy and the amount of literacy rate change in the state only really had a correlation with some poverty alleviation indicators. Per capita GDP was all over the map, and as was the average growth rate during the 2000s against other indicators. So there wasn't a whole lot to suggest that high average GDP growth rates during the 2000s, which is when India really boomed, really had that great an effect on a lot of the other non-economic indicators, which is kind of surprising. Okay, so can we say that based on these correlations, whether Myrdal's predictions in Asian drama were right or not? And it's really hard to say. On the one hand, with regards to corruption and inequality and poverty alleviation, he was right. There was a significance there, albeit not a terribly high one, but he was right that curbing corruption and lessening inequality would have a really positive impact on poverty alleviation. However, there were not a lot of correlations that were really very high, so we can't really say that he was right on all fronts. Again, please check out the full paper to see these numbers. But Myrdal was right in the direction of the correlation. So in no place did we see that positive development in one area would have a negative impact on another area. So in that way, even though the correlations were low, they're still kind of in the right direction. So Myrdal should get a little bit of credit for that. He was also right that in his critique against the neoclassical economists, that GDP per capita and GDP growth really weren't as important of development indicators as they thought that they were. So, so what did we learn in this? What did I learn in this research? I learned that India is a pretty tough nut to crack when it comes to understanding what's important for poverty alleviation. I was really expecting a lot higher correlations, and they just weren't there. India's pretty complicated, and I think this research kind of gave me a wake-up call for that. What I want to do for future studies is I want to expand both the indicators and the geographical range of the study to include more of the states that Myrdal included in Asian drama, also staying at the state level. So, for example, we'll look at provinces in Indonesia and the different states of Malaysia for future research. So, I really appreciate you sticking around and watching this video. It's kind of fun to make. I've never done this before. Yeah, thanks a lot. And I could really use your feedback. So, I'll be back in Japan in January, and so I'd love to see you all then. And if you could give me some written feedback, that'd be great. My email address is maxcaron, max.caugHron @gmail.com. Looks like I'm a little bit under my allotted time, so consider it a Christmas gift to all the subsequent presenters. Okay, thanks a lot.